What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another One Piece discussion, review, prediction video. I'm super excited. I read chapter 1044 on Friday. I've probably read it over 10 times, 2 times in the past few hours since the Viz Media official dropped, and 6, 7 times on the scanlated version. And this chapter is just so amazing. There's so much to go through. I'm not gonna do it the way I used to, whereas it was me going through page by page, because I feel like everybody's already read the chapter, so there's no reason for me to try to break down by explaining what's happening in the page because everyone's already read it. What I will do, however, is I'm gonna still go through it page by page, and I'm just gonna put my own what I see on it, because as I've explained before, the way I see this, if me and one of you guys who might be watching or anybody else in the world stand next to each other, look at the same painting or look at the same scenery, we'll probably pick two different things as the things that comes to our mind, as the things that catches our eyes, that catches our attention. So I feel like that's one of the things I love about One Piece and the One Piece community in general. Everybody is mentioning what they picked up, like, because every small panel could mean something. So we start the chapter, everything's amazing. I want to point out Yamato, the way Yamato's asking, did Zunisha say Luffy's Joyboy? It sounds like she might have read something about Joyboy in Oden's journal. We know she's had it, she used it, like she studied it like it was the Holy Bible to her, like it was a religious book. She's read it religiously. So that's an interesting take on that. So she's surprised. I love how Luffy's just constantly laughing, in tune with the Joyboy stuff. And then we cut across Sanji's waking up, hearing something like Luffy's. I'm assuming that's just Luffy's laugh, and the drum beat is so strong that everybody's hearing him, or it's just the drum beat, and those who know Luffy feel like got a similar feeling to it, like an instinct kind of thing. Everybody believing it's Luffy, and I love when we cut to Marijoa, because there's so much with the Gorosei going on here. And over the past few days, I've seen so many things in discussion about it. I'm going to try to address some of them from my point of view. So let's just get straight to it. Obviously, they're angry. They lost. I love how they're not mentioning any names. They're still keeping the Aigis 0 nameless, their agents. And I love how they're like, it could have led to some form of... They think they've succeeded at this point. They think Luffy's dead, because, and it's the way they're saying it is like, what if there was a potential that we would have begged to have made this decision now, sacrifice somebody to take Luffy out? As far as they're concerned, they've succeeded. They haven't received the news that shit's gone bad, that we've done goofed. They don't know that yet. And I love how now it's like a follow-up. It's like, I think it was chapter 1037, where we got the whole, the name was changed about the fruit. So feels like, obviously, what's happening there and what's happening with the Marijoa bit in the Hollow Power is like parallel happening at the same time. Like we're jumping back and forth between two different places in the One Piece world. I love that bit. And I love how they say they've tried to get the fruit for 800 years and never succeeded. That's just saying something. Like, they've tried to get the fruit, not its user. So that kind of makes sense, because I've read in so many different places on Reddit, and I've watched quite a lot of other YouTubers as well. I love watching YouTubers, and they all said the same thing to them. Why didn't the Gorosei try to, stomp Luffy out before he got big? As soon as they found out Luffy got the rubber fruit, why didn't they go for him? Well, again, I went back, I reread chapter 1037, and it does make sense what they say to a certain extent. It's a legend to them. The fruit is a legend to them. They didn't think about it, 800 years. No one's awakened it. Of course, they're still gonna try to acquire it because they know what it is and what the potential disaster could be. But when So long has gone, and no one's been able to awaken the devil fruit. At this point, they are not. They probably didn't think it would be such a pressing matter until it got to around, I'd say, after the war, Marineford War. That's when they realized it's a bit dangerous. This kid is, constantly pushing the limits. And we've seen almost everybody with awakened devil fruit are people who's, I think I mentioned this in the previous video as well, are usually yonkos, admirals, or yonko commanders, people who are constantly fighting, constantly pushing the limits of their abilities. And that's why they got worried. Maybe the previous users of, well, Navi, no, is the mythical Zoan type, Nika fruit. Maybe I'm gonna call it Nika fruit. Maybe the previous Nika fruit users were not as aggressive as Luffy, that like constantly fighting, constantly in combat with people who were almost, most of the time Luffy's fighting people who are stronger than him, and he's just gaining strength as he fights. And I think that's another part of it. So they just didn't realize that it's gonna mean so much. So they thought it's just another person who's eaten the Nika fruit. His time's gonna pass. They assume they're just gonna wait till Luffy dies, and they try to grab the fruit again before they find out who's eaten it. So, but now the things with Kaido's happening. They see that he's going up against Kaido. He's holding his own, and they're worried if he awakens now, because usually something needs to like be a trigger to cause a change and be a catalyst for a transformation. And fighting Kaido, what better catalyst than fighting Kaido, one of the strongest people, or at this moment probably the strongest person in the world of One Piece. I just wanted to address that as to why I think the Gorosei didn't make a move earlier on Luffy. I mean, there still could be that they maybe tried and Dragon was running interference. Dragon was, counter-attacking them somehow. But beside that, I don't see that they saw him as a threat until recently. And then we get to the whole point of Zoan fruits have a will of their own, and maybe that's why this fruit has managed to avoid the world government. When I read this bubble, first thing that came to my mind straight was Zoan fruits have a will of their own. I remember there was a cannon dog thing. The cannon or the gun ate a dog fruit or something like that in Alabasta, like prior Alabasta, in the bark work part. And the gun behaved like a dog. And even in Wano here, we've seen some of the people who've been having the artificial devil fruits. They display the characteristic of the fruit they've eaten, like characteristics that humans wouldn't do, like behavior things that humans wouldn't do, but like that animal would. So that brings me to a question: did the Nika fruit affect Luffy? Like, not in a major way of changing everything he would have done, because even the younger Luffy that we saw prior the devil fruit feels like he's heading in the current direction that Luffy is going. And the goofiness, I mean, Garp is goofy, let's be honest. So that does match. Maybe it has enhanced that ability. And here's where I'm going to go a step further, because I wrote it here. It's one of my main points. I've actually wrote it in big. I've been circles around it just to make sure I remember to bring it up in the video. Rayleigh said that a person's conqueror's haki is proportional, in a sense, to their strength and to their spirit and to their will. And I remember at one point it was called willpower. So does that mean Luffy's will is being enhanced by the will of the Nika Mythical Zoan fruit? And does that mean that that's why his haki might even be stronger than it's meant to be? Because that's a god. At the end of the day, Nika fruit has given Luffy, now that Luffy's awakened, he has the spirit of a god with his fruit. Shouldn't that mean like his haki would be insanely stronger? Maybe not insanely stronger, because again, I see the way I've seen things Oda does, he never, even when a power-up happens, he doesn't blow it out of proportion, where like a power-up happened like this, Luffy was barely keeping up with Kaido. Now that he's powered up, maybe he's as strong as Kaido, maybe a little bit stronger, but I don't see Luffy trampling Kaido out. It might, because again, that's a god fruit and it makes sense if Oda does it. But my main question about this first 4 or 5 pages is, does the will of the Zoan fruit, which is, even they mentioned it, this particular fruit has the name of a god. Does that affect Luffy's haki? Will it make Luffy's haki stronger? And in a sense, I'm going to jump a few pages here, but I'm going to come back and pick up the review from here as well. In a sense, when we go about, I think it's right chapter, page 10 and 11, where Luffy says, this is my pinnacle, he calls it gear 5. But in the page after, on page 11, you see the black lightnings coming from the roof, which is usually what's used to draw the haki waves. And at first, Kaido's like, what is going on, man? Why is his men getting knocked out? As soon as he senses the conquerors, he looks up, he's like, what is up there on the roof? He thinks Luffy's dead, but could it be because the reason he didn't realize this Luffy, because I'm assuming haki, different people's hakis feels different, is that now that Luffy's awakened, his haki is a lot stronger than previous, and like, it's on a different level, and it's stronger and even feels different. That's why Kaido didn't realize it might have been Luffy. And that brings me back to the will of their own. I would love that idea, in a sense, as long as it's kept within the boundaries, it's not blown out of proportion. At the end of the day, it's a god's fruit, and I love the fact, because all this time I was racking my brain when they said the fruit name is different, and when we knew it's Luffy's, I was like, it's gotta be a fruit that has some form of a rubber properties. But if it's a Nika's fruit, that makes sense, because Nika was a god. And whatever power Nika had, this fruit will give to whoever has eaten the fruit upon awakening. I'm assuming rubber, being the rubber properties for combat, is the most basic ability Nika had. And that's what Yuffie been using all this time. And then I love the next bit where they say his body, greater physical strength. Awakening brings a greater physical strength and freedom. I'm assuming freedom is, the way I think of freedom is like when the Flamingo used his awakening ability, he turned everything around him into strings. Luffy's power is a Zoan. He's awakened now, but he's a god. So does that mean that the freedom, well, for Parmesia, we know the freedom is for their fruit to affect their surroundings. But with Nika, it's a Zoan type. Does that mean the freedom means he can affect anything around him to the level he wants? Because the fighting we saw later on in this chapter was just, some of the things was harder to explain. Maybe if Luffy's fruit was the rubber fruit, you could explain it. But now that we know it's a Nika fruit, does that mean the freedom that comes with it is Luffy can do almost anything that his mind comes to it, like imagination-wise? I think that's a nice way to interpret it, because I'm pretty sure in the scanlation they said his power is only limited by his imagination. So if you put the two together, this could mean something big. It means, it kind of explains why Luffy's gears have always been about him kind of trying to replicate some of the stronger opponents he's come against. And then I love how they say it's the most ridiculous power in the world. Ridiculous, meaning it's ridiculous as in it makes no sense. It has no logic. To me, that's what the ridiculous of the Nika fruit is. And it's not strength-wise. Obviously, it's one of the strongest fruits around, but the ridiculous, I think, means that nobody can make heads or tail from it. It makes no sense to anybody who combated. And I suppose, in a sense, it's the fact that there's no logic to it is going to give Luffy a huge advantage later on. At first, when I read the chapter, when we got past that bit and then we got to the bit with Hiyori and Orochi, I was like, Oda, what are you doing? You hyped us up. You brought us to, like, if it's a car, if we're in a car, you put us in, in the 5th gear and you going 100 miles an hour, and then you just slammed the brakes and brought us down to 40, 20. But now that I've calmed down and I reread the chapter so many times, I don't think these things with Orochi and Hiyori are 20, 40 miles an hour. I think that's still an 80 miles an hour. It's obviously it's a bit slower pace, but it's huge what's happening here. Because to me, this has two meanings. First of all, it's a conclusion to the whole, Orochi and Hiyori being the ones to do it. And then I love the twist, Hiyori is telling Orochi that you're not trustworthy, and I love how Orochi is still trying to lie his way, thinks Hiyori is dumb enough to believe himself, like some of the other dumber characters we have in One Piece. We always have those, but she's strong, and I love how she is just not willing to forgive. And I love the first bit I love about this bit is how it's Conjurer coming back and actually attacking Orochi, because if you remember, when Conjurer became the thing, I think it's called Kazenbo, or what it became. He said, "Oh, it's like a suicide pact. We're gonna take everybody out with us." He said, "Koruzumi suicide pact," and now he's failed. But to him, that's not the real Conjurer anymore. It's like a will. What's left of him still believes in the suicide pact. So to him, that's not killing. Hiyori is not part of the pact. It's just killing whatever Kurozumi members are left. And in a sense, you could maybe say that's like him at the end. I don't want to say redemption, because the things he's done, there's no redemption for that. But maybe that bit of him that killed Orochi might have been the piece of him that truly, if there ever was, that's the piece of him that was a member of the Akazaya, the Red Scabbards. I think that might be it. But to me, I just love the poeticness of it. Orochi being killed by a member of his own family instead. And the second big meaning for that bit for me is that I think almost every other fight, every other combat going on Onigashima is done. Even the goons, even Kaido's beast pirate goons are now knocked out by Luffy's Conqueror's Haki. So I think this is in a way a symbolism to say that we're not going to get no more interruptions. What's coming from here onwards is going to be just an ass whooping between Kaido and Luffy. They're just going to go at it man to man. And again, I've said it multiple times, I do not see Luffy killing Kaido. Maybe by accident, if he just, because they did say he's going to be, his strength is greatly enhanced now that he's awakened. Maybe he might punch Kaido unconscious and just send him flying out of Wano. But how far they've flown all the way Flower Capital, I really don't see Luffy even punching Kaido out of Wano. But yeah, I see the only thing I can see is if somehow Kaido falls into the sea. That's the only thing I can see, for Kaido dying. But then I love how the hand comes down. That hand is, to me, that hand coming down from the roof grabbing Kaido is like when you're watching a cartoon, especially like older cartoon, like Tom and Jerry. And then you see like in a scene where, like as if the screen itself is ripped and a hand comes out, grabs something and pulls it through the screen, and then the cartoon continues. That's what that is to me. And I love how Oda's done this. It's like, this feels to me like the first 40, 50 chapters of One Piece when it was cartoonish. That's what it feels like to me. It's going back to that. And I love how he just yoinks Kaido out like, like he's holding some tiny worm that, you're a kid, you're playing in the gardens, you find a worm and, you just, play around with it. That's what it feels like. Like, it's like Kaido's an overgrown worm and Luffy's grabbing him and just pulling him out of there. He's yanking him out. Like, you don't belong down there. Get up here. And then I love how Luffy, I don't know, man. He looked like Popeye. With the bulky, muscly thing. And then Luffy just grabbing Kaido and just spinning him around. And I love the eyes. I love the cartooniness of the eyes. Like, Kaido is just like, what else going on? And I'm assuming this might be part of the ridiculous part of the power. Like, how is Luffy, effect? Like, if he had done the same thing before, it wouldn't have had this kind of effect. Maybe the ridiculous part is that it's not just ridiculous as in it makes no sense, the power, but maybe the ridiculous part is power makes no sense, but also it affects his opponents to behave different than they used to. And then I love how he, after spinning him, he's like, whacking him all over the place. That looks, to me, that looks like when Hulk was, smacking Loki around, or if I remember correctly, I think I might have seen this somewhere else, like in a cartoon, where like a snake or something was grabbed by something and it was being smacked all over the place. That looks cool. I love how he leaves Kaido, at the end on his back. Kaido looks like he's might have taken a bit of damage there. And I love how Luffy's constantly just laughing. That's, Joyboy, joy. I love that. Like, Luffy's just constantly laughing and fighting. He's like the laughing warrior, the laughing knight, who's freeing people in a way. And I love how, Kaido's like, thank you for surviving. And then immediately goes to breath blast. Like, straight away. Nothing. Just attacks. Thanks for surviving. By the way, here's an attack. Hold on to this. I love how Luffy's goofy at first, but that not conquerors, the observation hacky picks up that attack and he's like, oh, and then his eyes popping out again. Cartoon as hell. Here's the bit that confuses me. The way he grabs the ground and then, pulls it up. To me, that what would have been, if Luffy's fruit was truly rubber fruit, that would have been an amazing awakening. Him being able to turn anything he touches into like a rubbery thing. But maybe this is, again, I'm going to go back to the being ridiculous, because to me, that's one of the things that stood out from this chapter the most. Luffy's powers are ridiculous. Like, how did he know that he could do that? How did he know that he could grab the ground, pull it up, and bounce the blast back at Kaido? I mean, he's rubber. Rubber's meant to be bouncing things to, when you hit a rubber, it's meant to bounce back. So maybe that is one of the properties that's like Luffy's now know how to use, enhanced. Then we get him laughing and everything. I love that again. He's laughing, but it does say Gear 5. Another point, I love how to Luffy, it doesn't matter that it's awakening. To him, every time he's gone a gear, it's always been for him to grow stronger. Like, he went to Gear 2 because he could not beat the CP members. Because they had I'm forgetting the name. I know it begins with R, but they had their techniques. And Luffy went Gear 2 to upgrade his level, strength, speed to their level. Gear 3 was done around the same time, and then Gear 4 was again him upgrading himself with Haki so he can fight bigger monsters. Now he's Gear 5, step after that, and I love how he's like awakening just Gear 5. To him, it doesn't matter what it is, it's Gear 5. And again, the last panel, Luffy laughing and saying, "Don't sweat it." I love how nonchalant he is with the interruption from before. He doesn't care. Don't sweat it. Let's just finish this up. And that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, it's just amazing. I just want to make sure I've covered everything, guys. It's just, there's so much stuff to talk about. Yeah, I've already mentioned this. Why didn't world government go after Luffy? I did say, to me, at that point, I think they didn't really think it was important. Also, another thing is there an actual rubber fruit out there? Just because, remember, Ace had the flare fruit, he had the fire. Marco is the Phoenix, a mythical Zoan. Phoenixes have fire, but his fire has different properties than actual fire. But he did have fire. So does that mean that Luffy, now we know he has the human fruit, mythical Zoan model Nika, does that mean that there's actually a rubber fruit out there? And maybe if there is one, then maybe the Gorosei thought he might have the rubber fruit. Or even if they didn't, I think they didn't think it might be a threat. I mean, 800 years, no one's awakened it. What are the chances? But by the time they realized that this guy is most likely to awaken it, they made the move, but it's a bit too late. I love that. And then Shanks. I do have this one question. It's a burning question to me. And I don't think he knew, but I don't think he knew what fruit he stole. I truly, genuinely believe that Shanks stole the fruit in hopes of scamming some money out of the Marines. I truly believe that. But on the off chance that he didn't, On the off chance that he knew what the fruit was, why did he steal it? I mean, makes sense why he stole it, but why didn't he eat it himself? If he knew what the fruit actually is. I mean, it makes sense why the world government changed the fruit name. First of all, Nika was giving hope. Even just the name itself was, spreading hope that if someone who ate this fruit might awaken and free people, they wanted to take that away. Also, there's the other aspect of it. It might be easier for world government to acquire this fruit if people think that it has no value. Think about it. Someone finds a rubber fruit. What are the chances of them selling it instead of eating it? A lot higher than if somebody finds a mythical Zoan fruit that meant to give you the power of a god. I wouldn't be selling that. If it was me, I would have eaten that like that. But if it was gomu fruit and the world government comes in and says, oh, we give you 1 billion berry, like, I mean, it's a lot of money. I can live a better life. Sure. There you go. The fruit doesn't mean much. It's just a random Parmesia fruit. So there is the value aspect of it as well, that it would have been easier for them to acquire it if they changed the name. And I love that bit with it. And the last thing I want to do is Luffy increasing the size of his arm without doing any gear 3, blowing into his finger or blowing into any part of his arm in general. Does that mean that he can increase or decrease his own size? Because they said he has freedom. And he pulls the ground up. Another question, does that mean he can change the size of other things or their properties? Because if he can change the size of his own hand freely or his own body parts freely, and he can change the size of other objects or the properties freely, does that mean he can use the giant sword that's outside Onigashima? Imagine if he picks it up and reduces it down to a size that's suitable for him, because we've seen him throughout the series. Luffy has sometimes grabbed the sword randomly just for the fun of it. Would he use it? But I think, guys, I've covered everything I wanted to mention. But my main question for this, guys, is the bit about the will and how it would affect Luffy's haki with now him having spirit or will of a god through his fruit and is awakened. Do drop me a comment, guys, if you do watch this video. Let me know what you think about the will. Will it affect Luffy's haki? Has the will been affecting Luffy in general, like influencing him? I don't want to say controlling him, because I don't feel like Luffy was under any kind of control. But I believe it would influence him in a small, minimal ways of, behavior. But I think in general, even if Luffy didn't have the rubber fruit or the Nika fruit, he'd still be the same Luffy. Still would be doing goofy stuff, because we've seen him even before he ate it. He was doing those kind of stuff anyway. So let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this chapter as much as I have. I hope you've been as hyped about this as I have. I am gonna have a hard time this week waiting for next chapter. I won't lie. I think this is just gonna be a torturous week. I am so happy we don't have a break for next week. Honestly, if there was a break, I would have broken out in tears. It would have been so hard. But yeah, I hope you guys love this, and I hope I see you guys in my next video for One Piece and for other stuff if I do see you guys. As always, guys, stay safe, take care,